No phone calls, no messages. Nothing but junk mail and overdue bills to keep me company. Seems nobody wants to hire a real private dick anymore. A professional like me. A guy who does the detective work nobody else wants to do. A guy who wears hats and walks around in a black and white world. I began contemplating a more profitable line of work, like politics.
We are the show you want to know. It's time to talk to you.
All right, folks. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to the Thursday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show here on AM 830 WCRN. Let's do some housekeeping. You can join the conversation over the next hour at 508-871-7000. That's 508-871-7000. And our text line, that's up and running. So you can text the show just like you would text anyone else. Simple at 617-297-8388. 617-297-8388. It does appear on a screen here in the studio in real time. I can always, when I come on and sign on, I see all the texts that people have sent, say, to other shows during the week, and I do my best to make sure that they've seen that. All right, 508-871-7000 to join the conversation, and don't forget that this station, like thousands of other radio stations do, we stream to the TuneIn app, which means you can take us anywhere, and I love that feature. Whether you're getting in and out of the car, you can just stream it on your device. Whether it's your phone, your smartphone, your tablet, whatever, or just from your computer at home, that's fantastic. Now, I do stream the show to the station's Facebook page, my social media stuff at Joe Mangi Show. So that's X and Facebook and Twitch TV, LinkedIn profile, and of course to the YouTube channel and the Rumble channel. And we started, I don't know how many weeks ago now, but we are now streaming on Instagram. And a lot of you apparently are watching it on Instagram. Today is behind the glass flying the board back at HQ. So when you call 508-871-7000, he will get you set up and into the studio for two-way talk and conversation. So it's always a debate. What do we cover each time? I do want to talk today a little bit about Todd Blanche Attorney General nomination and, of course, a lot on, because this has been interesting, the Jay Clayton hearing. And actually later in the second half of the show, after 11:30 break, Frontiers of Freedom Institute President George Landrith will join me. George, and I know you've known him, he's filled in for me, you hear him on the weekly report. He's a Washington guy, conservative Washington guy, but he spends his days on the Hill or in DC somewhere at luncheons and congressional breakfasts and meetings on the Hill all the time. So he has a very unique perspective into the hearings. He has a unique perspective as to what's being said among the Washington people. So I said, hey, you want to jump on? Because I really want to talk about Clayton a bit here. This is Jay Clayton's, because he's going for confirmation of DNI. And I think the intelligence role has changed. And yes, Trump has changed the way the intelligence agencies work and how they interact with the Washington elite. And what we're seeing going on from the Mar-a-Lago raid on, well, we'll get into it, but we're going to talk about that. But the Attorney General role here, so he's acting. So Todd Blanche is acting Attorney General. He's seeking the Senate confirmation, of course, to hold that office permanently. And the Judiciary Committee held its nomination hearing yesterday. It continues today. The official committee page hasn't posted a committee vote or reported a nomination to the full Senate yet. Therefore, today, now, it's happening. And acting Attorney General Todd Blanchard has completed his Judiciary Committee confirmation hearing, but just hasn't been confirmed. So that's the thing. So they will still get into this today, and they'll talk about it. We'll ask George a little bit about that as well. The other thing, and it's been on my notes here for a couple of shows, and I don't know if it's on your radar screen yet here, but we've had some massive explosions around the country lately, right? It's like 6 explosions happening May 21st and May 30th. It was like this week where things just blown up all over the place. The shipyard explosion on Staten Island, the Garden Grove chemical tank emergency Then there was the Longview, Washington paper mill disaster, a Dallas apartment complex explosion, the Blue Origin rocket. Remember that exploded? Think how bad that would have been. Captain Kirk could have been on that one. And a meteor airburst right here over Mass in New Hampshire. I don't know if you guys remember that or felt it when it happened. So there is presently no evidence here that these events, they're connected or coordinated, terrorist related, or part of sabotage campaign or anything like that. I'm not suggesting that. But the montage combines industrial accidents, a gas line strike, intentionally conducted rocket engine tests, a chemical emergency that never actually exploded, and a naturally occurring phenomenon, a meteor hitting the Earth or exploding over the Earth. Very interesting. They're all not connected. Of course, it reminds me of one of those, Christian novels or one of those guys that writes the book or the mechanic, right? Specializes in political or corporate assassinations all look like accidents, and that there's no connection here till the spunky junior analyst or the reporter kind of finds, oh no, they're actually all part of a bigger picture of somebody. I'm not suggesting that. It's just jumps out when you see and you're looking online, you're reading a bunch of stuff, and all of a sudden you start seeing an explosion, and within 24 hours another one, and then the next day another one, and you say, well, this is weird. What's going on here? The Staten Island shipyard explosion, that was on the 22nd of May. May ship repair, Marinas Harbor in Staten Island. Now, 57-year-old Zhuxing Li was killed in that explosion. Major fire occurred inside the dry dock. It's a dry dock. That's where it's a garage for ships, where you put your ship for everything from mechanical repairs or repairing the hull or scraping the hull and all that. 36 people injured there, most of them firefighters and emergency personnel. And the FDNY ultimately classified the explosion as accidental. So investigations determined that vapors from flammable industrial paint accumulated in a confined space and it ignited it. The Garden Grove chemical tank emergency happened between the 21st and the 26th of May. GKN Aerospace in Garden Grove, California. Now this tank, it contained approximately 6,000 to 7,000 gallons of methyl methacrylate, or MMA. Started to overheat, and that's very flammable chemical. It's used in plastics and industrial manufacturing. So of course, heat, rising temperatures, pressures created fears of runaway chemical reaction, potentially catastrophic explosion. So about 40 to 50,000 people were ordered to evacuate at the peak of the emergency. And there was a crack in the tank that allowed the pressure to vent. And the temperature, because of that, fell, and authorities concluded that the immediate explosion risk has passed, but it could have happened, and it was a bad situation. Longview paper mill tank, right? Dynaway Packaging, Longview, Washington. Massive industrial tank, they're known as Tank G, it collapsed or it imploded. 11 workers were killed in that, with several others seriously injured. Now, the tank is designed to hold under 1 million gallons, about 900,000 gallons. It contained white liquor. That's a highly caustic solution involving sodium hydroxy and sodium sulfide. Now that's used in paper production. So, of course, the Chemical Safety Hazard Investigating Board opened a formal investigation. Nothing's been determined, but another interesting situation. And it is a case to watch. Of the 6 incidents at Longview, most warrants a sustained investigation because there was deferred maintenance, inspection records, pressure relief systems failed, early warning signals, worker safety procedures, and whether regulators or management missed a very preventable hazard there. And then there was the Dallas apartment explosion. The Clyde apartment building in Oak Cliff, Dallas. Natural gas explosion. The fire destroyed part of the apartment building. 3 people lost their lives in that one, including a child. And 6 others were injured. So these are tragic things. And of course, the Blue Origin rocket explosion. Cape Canaveral. It's funny you say Cape Canaveral. Because isn't Cape Canaveral, right? It was Kennedy and Space Center and then Cape Canaveral. Media is referring to it as Cape Canaveral now. Surprise hasn't been changed to Donald Trump Space Center, but it's still early, right? So the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida, the New Glenn rocket exploded during an integrated hot fire ground test. No persons were killed. And the rocket was destroyed and launch infrastructure sustained some damage. Elon Musk has talked about this because we would watch all kinds of SpaceX stuff blow up on the pad, blow up after taking off, and it would be whatever it was, $1 billion when this happens. And Musk, like a true visionary Nikola Tesla type of thing, said, "Well, that's great. It's like Edison and the light bulb. You got to fail X thousands of times before you get it. And every time something like that happened, it brought a default to their attention, and they were able to engineer their fix on it and so forth. So even when engineers, right, deal with these self-driving cars, Wayu or whatever it is. And I remember a year or so ago, because we mentioned it on the show, that one of these cars, I think it was in San Francisco, hit a bus. It was an emergent situation. Hit the bus. Nobody was seriously hurt or anything of that nature. But the Wayu company and the engineers, they were excited little nerds about it because the data that they were able to collect and how they were able to look at that bus crash with their intelligent car, self-driven car, allowed them to see an error in design, patch it, fix it, so it would not happen again. So you have to sometimes do that with life, right? You got to look at setbacks and failures as an opportunity to reset and fix something, whether it's behavior, engineering, or whatever the case may be. So is something coordinated happening? All the evidence says no, and I'm not suggesting that. I'm just find it interesting. You see patterns sometimes when you're looking at stuff. So Staten Island, accidental ignition of paint vapors. Garden Grove, overheated chemical tank. Explosion, avoided. Longview, industrial tank failure. Cause under investigation. Dallas, gas line damage during drilling. Blue Origin, rocket failure during engine testing. New England, we had a really cool meteor airburst over New England. Not planned. We can't control it. Just another explosion that was happening. So there's some things on this. Now, social media took 6 completely different events, removed the dates and context, and added ominous music and manufactured the appearance of a national pattern. And I'm here to say there isn't. They're all individually things that happen just in a very short, in a week span that we have all this stuff happen, and it's interesting. All right, folks, you're listening to the Joe Mangiacotti Show here on AM 830, WCRN. And of course, as I said before, we are always streaming my show on multiple platforms. And don't forget that when I get off the air, the show is slightly edited, the audio, and then distributed through all the podcast platforms. And you can subscribe on Spotify, Podbean, iHeartRadio, any of those places. You can do that. Now, the one thing that I am very curious about is there's a lot of church fires happening. And that, I am thinking, what's going on there? And we can look at, there's at least 6 Christian houses of worship have been targeted by arson or attempted arson this year. In New York and Louisiana, Missouri. That includes a historic Dutch Reformed church destroyed in Brooklyn, a Baptist church in a Jehovah's Witness Kingdom Hall, firebombed in Queens, a Catholic church destroyed in Louisiana, and 2 Missouri churches attacked. But we also have to be precise here. The motives differ. Several remain unknown, and investigators have not announced evidence of one coordinated national campaign again. It's just a pattern of churches being attacked or burning. Most are arson, some are in question. What is undeniable is that setting fire to any house of worship is an attack, not just on the building, but on religious liberty. and the right of Americans to worship in peace. Now, this June 19th fire destroyed the South Bushwick Reformed Church in Brookline. I revert to Brookline, Mass, right? It's Brooklyn. Has now officially been classified as intentionally set and is being investigated as arson. And the congregation is part of the Reformed Church in America. That's the name of the church, Reformed Church in America. Historically rooted in the Dutch Reformed tradition. And the pastor there, James Stewart, said the congregation was unaware of any threats or enemies. It's not like, from a Hollywood show, evil developers trying to get everybody out of the neighborhood or anything. Nobody's threatening them. They had no incident that might have said maybe something is going to happen here. The historic church was considered a total loss, will likely have to be demolished and rebuilt. But they said, oh no, they started working with historical society, landmarks. They're working with contractors and experts in all of this, and they were able to come to the determination it can be rebuilt. And I'm looking at least 3 Christian houses of worship in New York that have been targeted by confirmed or attempted arson this during 26 this year. That South Bushwick Dutch International intentionally set fire. That happened. Then Iglesia Bautista El Messia in Ozone Park in Queens. That's a Baptist Christian church. A man threw a Molotov cocktail at the church in early July. It did not ignite or cause damage. Attempted, which is always good. Interborough Congregational Kingdom Hall, Woodhaven, Queens. That's a Jehovah's Witness. Same suspect allegedly threw another Molotov cocktail at the Kingdom Hall. Again, no injuries or significant damage, but those seem to be connected. And the suspect in the 2 Queens attacks, Yogesh Saranja, he was reportedly being investigated in connection with as many as 7 separate arson incidences since late June, most involving a house of worship. But authorities have not publicly identified 7 churches. Some incidents involved commercial properties. But he's attacking these churches. And he had a Roman Catholic church in Louisiana, African Methodist Episcopal Church in Missouri, a second one in Missouri, also Episcopal, St. Peter's Episcopal Church in Ladue. That's happening. So 3 Christian worship sites in New York City, 1 destroyed and 2 attempted fire bombings. 1 Catholic church destroyed in Louisiana, 2 churches targeted with limited damage in Missouri. So that's a minimum of 6 publicly identified Christian houses of worship targeted by arson and attempted arson in 3 states. So this isn't an official nationwide total. It's what I've seen, again, crossing my desk in news. And you start to say, well, what's going on in this? And it's not just Christian, other religious buildings, right? They're not just the churches, because in Mississippi, there was a synagogue, Jewish synagogue. Beth Israel Congregation in Jackson suffered extensive damage in January. And then there was a mosque in Pennsylvania, Northeast Pennsylvania Islamic Center was intentionally set on fire July 5th. And fires, we should not yet call arson. But there was a fire that badly damaged the vacant First Reformed Church in Astoria. That's in Queens in April. And then the Mother of African Church in Wilmington, Delaware. And a fire was also at the San Francisco Central Seventh-day Adventist Church. That was construction work inside the building. So there's these churches that seem to be being set on fire. Now, the interesting thing, the one here in the several in New York, especially this Brooklyn one in this neighborhood, I think 173 years old. First, it was going to be demolished. And then they said, no, actually, we have the means and we're GoFundMe page and so forth. So the Astoria Church was calculated, but not confirmed, as arson, right? 138, that's not 78, I don't know where that came from. 138-year-old building burned And the city deemed it structurally dangerous. So the preservation efforts were kicked in. And they got a kind of a stay on this because there was so much backlash to this. And what's interesting, because if online and what's going on there, is because Mandami's director of buildings, DOB, he's Muslim, and he was very quick to demolish these non-Muslim church. So he's getting a lot of criticism for that. And across the churches, the one I'm talking about in Brooklyn is a 173-year-old landmark, right? South Bushwick Reformed Church, burned in a massive fire back in June 19th. It's just not even a month ago. Well, basically a month ago. Flames tore through the place, right? The steeple collapsed. It was a total loss for the building. It stood since 1853. It served many generations of New Yorkers and roots going back to the Dutch settlers. So it is being investigated. This is arson. The congregation stepped up immediately. They launched the GoFundMe page, worked with engineers who said parts of the structure could be saved, hired attorneys, and pleaded with the city to hold off on demolition. Well, they explored preservation and rebuilding options. This was a landmark Protestant church, a piece of Brooklyn history, and a house of worship for Christians. What happened? The New York City Department of Buildings, under Commissioner Ahmad Tajini, a practicing Muslim appointed by Mandami, he moved forward with full demolition. The church gets the bill for tearing it down, by the way. And landmark protections, they vanish. So that would open the door for developers. In efforts to save even part of it have been denied. So this is drawing serious criticism, rightly so, I think. Look, I'm a law and order guy, safety first, buildings can't be left in dangerous condition, but let's apply some logic here, some detective work here, and common sense. This isn't just any building, it's a church attacked by a suspected arson. In response from City Hall seems to be tear it down and send the faithful the invoice on that, by the way, instead of partnering with them to rebuild it. So why the rush to demolish it when the congregation was actively working on preservation plans? Would this same speed of finality apply if it were a mosque damaged by fire? Would Mandami and Commissioner Tajini move so quickly to erase Muslim house of worship, then build a community for it and clear the way for development? Or would there be every accommodation, every grant, every delay to honor faith and history? We've seen multiple church fires in New York City this year. Is it a pattern? Is it a coincidence? In each case, a non-Muslim house of worship getting the short end while equal protection under the law is supposed to be blind. And this isn't about one man's faith, it's about just the equal treatment. The Constitution doesn't have a religious test for city officials at all, but it does demand the government not show favoritism or hostility toward any faith. Rule of law means the same standards apply to everyone, whether it's a Catholic parish or Protestant church, a synagogue, or a mosque. If arsonists are torching houses of worship, the city's job is to investigate aggressively, protect the innocent, facilitate the recovery, not accelerate the erasure of it. So, my friends, New York has a proud history of religious liberty. We've got to ask, is that history being respected? Or is it being bulldozed or for political, ideological reasons? The people in the pews at South Bushwick deserve better here. Every faith community does. This isn't compassion or safety. It's one tone-deaf governance that smells a little selective enforcement, if you ask me. So what do you think? Do you see a double standard here in your neighborhoods? This is why eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. We'll keep digging, but it doesn't, to me, pass the smell test. And the interesting thing is I'm watching a bunch of the stuff on social media and so forth, and then I come across the Italian American Civil Rights League I think that's the same one, isn't that was started by Colombo? Yeah, he had mafia ties and all that, but he started this, and he had a big role in the making of The Godfather and all that. But anyway, I haven't been following them till I saw this particular post that they made. And they're on X under the IACRL, the Italian American Civil Rights League. And it has a picture of the steeple on fire in the church. And it just simply, the post says, foreigners are burning down New York City churches now, ? So their response to this is, dear third worldists, if you ever try to burn down a Roman Catholic church, we'll inflict levels of retribution on you so powerful that you will all be running back to Uganda. Love, the Italians. Now, I don't know. I think that's kind of funny. James Wood, he reposted it saying, you're going to love the Italians, but watch this. More churches to come. I think all of a sudden, it just seemed very easy for this administration in New York to erase a house of worship that wasn't of the same faith of them. Or am I reading too much into that? 508-871-7000. What say you on that? That's just an opinion piece on this. But we're going to take a break in a minute here. And when we come back, we should be joined by George Landrith, president of Frontiers of Freedom Institute. And as you know, I'm a senior fellow there. It's a think tank out of D.C. But George is only the second, right? It was started by Senator Wallop from Wyoming, buddy of Ronald Reagan. And the function that we do there is we used to call them white papers, but now because of social media, we still write white papers. But now they're done as postings, or they're done as hits on TV and radio shows. But it's to, issue a further policy or meet with members of Congress after we do the research and we form opinions on something and we present it to them. So George is constantly, as a DC guy, he lives in the area. He has standing lunch meetings, standing breakfast meetings, or whatever the case may be. So George will be able to give us some insight, because I think the Clayton one is of a lot of interest. But we do have to take our mid-show break here on the Thursday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN or Radio Central. So we'll take a quick break. We'll come back on the other side. Lines are open and available, 508-871-7000. That's 508-871-7000.
WCRN. Time now for the forecast from the Boston Independence Group Weather Center. Call Jerry Doherty today at 877-772-1776. Retirement is within reach.
I'm Chief Meteorologist Sherry Spear, and here's the latest Boston 25 weather on Radio 830 WCRN. We've got smoky skies and reduced air quality in the forecast again this afternoon, with high temperatures in the lower 80s. Overnight, we've actually got a front that comes through, and that is going to clear out the clouds and the smoke, and that means sunshine's going to stick around all day tomorrow. You'll wake up to some 60s. You've got highs in the lower to mid 80s. Tomorrow is going to be a much nicer day. I'm Chief Meteorologist Sherry Spear, and you can hear Boston 25 live for the morning drive weekdays on AM 830 WCRN.
More live and local radio is next. Stay tuned to Radio Central, 830 WCRN.
Hi, I'm Lee Gaudette of the Gaudette Insurance Agency, a third-generation family business based in Whitensville with branch office locations in Grafton, Shrewsbury, Westboro, and Southborough. We are a full-service independent agency offering all aspects of insurance to businesses, families, and individuals. We are in the peace of mind business. Call, click, or come in to see us at any of our locations for a free assessment of your insurance needs. Also, listen to Radio Central WCRN every Friday morning at 9:30 for the Gaudette Insurance Show.
The best Italian cuisine served by some of the nicest folks you'll ever meet is at Ziti's Italian Trattoria. It's fine Italian cooking at the Speedway Shopping Center, 290 Turnpike Road in Westboro. It's like sitting down with your family for an authentic home-cooked Italian meal. From intimate dinners to catering for events of all sizes. From pizzas and calzones to classic Italian dinners. Every meal at Ziti's is one you'll remember. Head on down to Ziti's, 290 Turnpike Road in
right, folks, welcome back here to the second half of the Thursday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN, 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. Lines are open and available today. Find the board behind the glass back at HQ as I broadcast from the Cameo studio. So that does mean the Cameo Cam is on, and you can watch me on the station's Facebook page. You can watch me on YouTube, Rumble, X, Twitch TV, LinkedIn profile, and now Instagram. Many ways to watch, many ways to listen. As promised, President of the Frontiers of Freedom Institute, George Landrith, now joins us virtually. Hey, George, good morning. You look marvelous.
You're just telling me you need a new set of glasses.
Hey, just ordered some. So, hey, thanks for joining. I know you're very busy, and I was telling our listeners, I mean, you're down in the D.C. area. You live in the area, you work in the area, you have standing breakfast meetings and lunch meetings. And so you can bring, I think, a very unique perspective to any confirmation hearing that's happening. But right now, we have Trump's nominee for Director of National Intelligence since Tulsi Gabbard left, Jay Clayton. He appeared before the Senate Intelligence Committee yesterday and again today. He's attempting to convince senators that his background in federal prosecution, securities regulation, and that's an important one, and we'll get into that in a second, and international finance, it equips him to oversee the nation's intelligence community, even though he does not come from the traditional military or intelligence agency pipeline. And the hearing centered on, I think, George, the one fundamental question: can Jay Clayton provide President Trump with intelligence that is timely, accurate, objective, and independent, even when the conclusions may be politically inconvenient? Clayton has not yet been confirmed. Intelligence Committee Chairman Tom Cotton said he intends to hold a committee business meeting today. Now, Clayton currently serves as the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. He previously chaired the Securities and Exchange Commission during Trump's first administration. He spent much of his private sector career practicing corporate and securities law. And his financial background is central to his case for confirmation. See, he's arguing that modern national security threats do not arrive solely through military invasion, terrorism, traditional espionage. And ever since Pearl Harbor, I mean, we have oceans between us, from the usually our threats, which is why we take people coming into our hemisphere in South America or off our coast very seriously. But everybody pretty much knows a conventional attack on the United States never going to work out well for you. So he's pointing to the fact that it's financial networks and sanctions evasions, cryptocurrencies, strategic investments, supply chain control, advanced technology, even artificial intelligence, economic pressure by hostile governments. And the main thing about intelligence being reported to a president, it doesn't matter. When we talk about this stuff, George, I think we're going to take Trump out of it because people go nuts when they hear Trump. The president, as an intelligence agency, you're not supposed to, and tell me if I'm getting this wrong, and I mean, my exposure to security has always been corporate and private, but the intelligence agency do not make decisions. They're supposed to provide unbiased, cold, hard intelligence. And those that we've elected to be our governing bodies, they do what they do with that information. So let's get your perspective on Clayton. I'd like to ask you first, is he a good man for the job? And then we'll talk about how he's a little different than your traditional nominee.
That sounds good. You made a lot of good points, but I think he brings a strong legal and prosecutorial background to this thing because he was, as the U.S. Attorney in New York City, he has aggressively prosecuted national security threats, including terrorists, international cartels, money laundering, and trafficking cases. And also, as you mentioned, he was also he led the SEC, which gave him extensive experience in financial regulation, enforcement, and also managing a large or complex federal agency. And so I think he has some good experience, even though you're right, he doesn't necessarily look like he's a military intelligence person, or didn't work for the CIA or something like that. But I think that he is he was just nominated back in June, so last month, and after Tulsi Gabbard resigned. And so I think it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I think the short-term acting DNI leader is he actually did lack deep intelligence experience, and I think Clayton is viewed as being more experienced and having the sorts of skills that you'd want to have at the DNI. So I think he'll be able to synthesize intelligence, advise the president, and oversee the operations across the intelligence community, because that's part of his job. He's not the chief. He's not actually a spy. He's in charge of the intelligence community to kind of supervise them and so forth. So I think, Republicans and some more bipartisan voices have praised him for his public and private sector leadership, his judgment, and his proven ability to tackle complex threats. But some people seem not to, like him, because they'll just, like you said, they hate the president so much they just want to use whatever grounds they can to oppose him. I think having a DNA person is important, because it's not really a political job.
Right.
It's a national security job.
Right. So, and I think that, because didn't he serve, he was Trump's personal attorney at one time, was he not? Right. He had a background.
He may be. I'm not sure about that. I'd have to double check, but I think that, I think that he was, because before he was the local attorney and the prosecutor, he was just a well-respected attorney in general.
Yeah, and I know that the Times, right, they've gone to court over some of Clayton's subpoenas, and that's coming out just over last night, because they're continuing today. Then the New York Times formally asked a federal judge to quash subpoenas signed by Clayton that would require 5 Times reporters to testify about confidential sources connected to reporting on security concerns involving the Qatar-provided Air Force One aircraft. Right now, that I don't know what's there, right? But remember, he switched. The Secret Service had Trump switch the Air Force One, go from the new Qatar, the red, white, and blue, very nice looking plane. I guess it's a beautiful plane, all of that. When it was gifted to the United States, and again, it's gifted to the United States, not to Donald Trump, which means Trump uses it only in the capacity as the sitting president, and then the next sitting president can use it if they'd like to, with the Secret Service. Now, a couple things. One is usually all the Air Force Ones are identical looking, right? Just like the helicopters, the take them to and from the White House to Andrews and all that, and they fly, infinity and A patterns and so forth. It's all for security. You can't identify which helicopter the president's actually in. And the same thing, you shouldn't be able at a glance tell which version of Air Force One Donald Trump's in. Obviously this one, because it's painted different. And we're supposed to have all the upgrades. Me personally, George, and you might know this stuff better because you talk to these guys, I don't think that plane has the same security levels that a plane that's built from scratch has. And what I'm saying is the normal Boeing 747s that become Air Force One, they're constructed with everything like mesh wiring, right? It's basically a flying Faraday cage. So you can't zap it with a high energy beam and affect the electronics in it. These are things I can't imagine. You'd have to almost disassemble that plane and reassemble it. So I never was confident that the Qatar plane was ever going to be up to our normal Air Force One standards, but it's a nice gesture and it can be used by secretary cabinets or whatever. But it was a last minute switch. And of course, the blogosphere, I think we used to call it, but you know what I mean, the social media went crazy with conspiracy theories and so forth. Do you think there was more to that went on? Or was it just because, look, Trump is at the top I mean, the absolute pinnacle of most wanted hit list for Iran, right? And a few other countries for that matter.
Yeah.
Do you think there was something more with that plane switch?
Well, no, I think you're right. I think it's very hard to very quickly update a completed and fully built plane to have all the technologies that the Air Force One is, because like you said, when the Boeing builds an Air Force One, they don't just pull off a normal 747 and ship it to the White House.
No.
It's actually built from the ground up very differently, because not because of it has to fly better, but because it has to be able to deal with. Because when you and I are flying around the country, I don't think there's a lot of people who want to shoot the plane down necessarily.
No,
but
unless
when
they
you're
knew we were on it,
States,
George.
but when you're the president of the United States, that can be much more dangerous. And it wouldn't just be this president. It could have been dangerous, for example, for Ronald Reagan or for Jimmy Carter or for any of them, because some people see it as just a way to.
Well, I mean, the current one was ordered after 9/11. The one that ultimately came for for Obama. When Obama took office, that was about the delivery of the new one after, because one thing that they discovered after 9/11 was that plane was not equipped as a command center. They had to, first of all, they had to fly so high to just for safety reasons, again, security, to be out of range of a lot of missiles and things of that nature. When they got so high, they were blind. They couldn't, President Bush at the time, could not really communicate. He didn't know what the hell was going on until, and we know what he landed at a base and then back to DC against advice. But the point is, they realized after 9/11, no, this thing has to be, we need a new one. And like I said, when they build it, it's like saying that, Cadillac sent the White House a standard stretch Cadillac. No. I mean, the Beast, as it's called, the code word for the presidential limousine, is not a Cadillac. It's a tank with Cadillac insignia put on it. I mean,
it has a lot of other technologies too, because someone might
again,
shoot,
Faraday cage, run tires, all that.
They might shoot gas at it, and so it has a filter system so that if they were to do poisonous gas,
and it's pressured. The plane and the car, right? They're both pressured, so there's a constant flow. It's pressurized, meaning that if anything that's happening outside can't leak into the car.
Right.
It's constantly pushing out and pressurized out, so the beast of the plane could fly through explosion dust. It could fly through chemical attack. Nothing's going to penetrate the seal of the beast of the plane. Again,
and I'm glad my car doesn't have that, because I couldn't afford to pay for that. And since I've never had, the worst thing I've ever had to drive through is maybe where someone hit a skunk. Yeah. So there was a bad smell in
nice
the air. But I'd rather not pay an extra $100,000 for my car just to keep the skunk smell out.
Absolutely.
Once every 10 years.
So Clayton, it appears that his nomination will advance, right? Tom Cotton says they're going to take a vote next week, early next week. No precise meeting date has been publicly posted yet. Republican leadership continues to indicate that Clayton is in relatively good shape for confirmation, although the vote may now be a little more partisan than originally anticipated. But the bottom line here, yesterday's contentious hearing, it didn't derail him, right? It probably cost him some Democratic votes, but there is currently no indication of meaningful Republican opposition. And again, this New York Times thing is kind of breaking overnight. So Democrats, some are backing away from the bipartisan support. Chuck Schumer called Clayton's hearing or performance abysmal. Color me surprised. He said it made Democratic support less likely. Democrats focused heavily on Clayton's refusal to use their preferred formulation that Biden won. And I did catch this. He said, I'm not election denying, but this comes back because they want you, have you noticed this? The Democrats that keep doing this to nominees and certain Republican politicians who won the 2020. And they often vote, answer with Joe Biden was confirmed as president. Now, back when all that was happening and people kept saying, it was stolen. When we look at it from 30,000 foot view, George, we're all going to bed in 2020 and Trump's winning. And then in the middle of the night, right, this spike goes up and everybody says it doesn't look right. But the bottom line, I said it, 6 years ago and say it now again. So what? Yes. If it happened, we got to stop it. You can't undo a presidency because that's not what makes them president, right? It's the Electoral College. How did the electorals vote? They voted for him, and and they don't have to vote the way the state goes, right? That's still an option. So the fact that the Electoral College selected Joe Biden got sworn in as president, he was president, legitimate president. Now, we might have issues with the amount of fraud that took place, but you can't undo in a presidency, right? I mean, how does that happen? There's no mechanism. Oh, we're going to say everything that Biden did or people representing Biden did no longer counts. It doesn't work that way. So they were trying to catch him on this or force him to say that he won. And to my knowledge, he never said he won it. He said Joe Biden was president. He just kept repeating that Joe Biden was president from 2021 to 25. So why are they doing that? Are they trying to spin him off as a election denier and he can't be trusted with providing intelligence if he doesn't agree with their way of thinking?
Well, I think they're trying to do that because I think that's just a partisan way of viewing it. But I think a fairly rational thing you'd have to, given all the information we now have, because obviously a lot of data has come up in state by state since the 2020 election that gives us questions as to, was that legitimate? Now, obviously, even if we determine it wasn't legitimate, it doesn't change the fact that he was the president because we can't go back in time. We don't have a time machine for us to go back. And
if I did, I don't know if I'd use it on that.
Yeah, exactly.
There'd be a few other things. Yeah.
Right. But so the point is, I think that they're just trying to make a partisan issue out of this because they want people to basically deny that there's evidence of voter fraud. Now, whether it was enough voter fraud to change the outcome has not yet been proven beyond a reasonable doubt. It's not because there's it's just data out there, I don't know if it has to be proven at this point because even if you were successfully prove it, what does that mean? But I think the data is interesting and Americans should at least be aware of it because we need to make sure that we have secure elections. And it's not a good idea to allow elections to flow where you just have a hard time believing. An example would be in California, when they have voting come in for 3-4 weeks after the election, they always come in like 99% for the Democrats.
Yeah.
Whether it's a congressional race where on election night.
Yeah, look at the mayoral race, right? Yeah. Look at that. I mean, all of a sudden, the woman who gave the concession, the third one, days after, not later in the election day, days after the election, spikes almost 90 degrees up in it, but that's a whole nother conversation. But what's interesting, George, because I don't want to run out of time without getting on this. So President Trump, he's scheduled to address the country tonight concerning newly declassified intelligence related to the 2020 election, because Clayton's hearing became consumed by that issue as we're talking about it. Trump's remarks, it could immediately affect the political atmosphere surrounding Clayton's committee vote. Is this purposefully timed or what? So Jay Clayton came through the hearing, bruised but standing. Democrats turned the confirmation of America's next intelligence chief into another argument over the wording of the 2020 election. The real overnight development is that New York Times now is asking a judge to block subpoenas that Clayton authorized in a national security leak investigation. The committee vote is expected early next week, as Cotton said. And at this point, his nomination still appears to be on track. Do you have any more insight into, I think he's speaking at 9 tonight, right?
I think so. And I think you're right. It could be that he was going to do it at some point just to kind of let Americans know the importance of working on things like voter integrity. But maybe now, yesterday's hearing made it more important for him to do now. It's very I guess we'll find out when he gives the speech, because
Sure.
it'll become clear if is it a rebuttal to the hearing yesterday, or is it
Well, I'll have to take a break from Golden Girl reruns so I can watch The President at 9. What happened? But let's not forget, because remember just a few months ago, right? There was that Georgia, Tulsi Gabbard was down there when they seized a bunch of records and all of that. I mean, that was just a few months ago. And again, we don't know what we don't know till we know it, guys. But what did they pull out of there? What tapes did they pull out of there? Right now, you got whistleblowers, you got all kinds of stuff. So is this connected to information they pulled out of Georgia back when they did that? I don't know. But he chose tonight. And I mean, it's not like Trump didn't know that the vote would have not have taken place, right? He knows that wouldn't have happened by today. So is it just totally, or is it totally not connected? Does Trump not care, or is just not calculating Clayton's hearing and nomination into this? Is in his, we know how Trump works, right? He's very hard to keep anything quiet. He says absolutely whatever he thinks. He doesn't have that filter, which is why a lot of people don't like him. And it's also why a lot of people do like him. Right? I mean, I spent the early part of my career in this industry and as a news guy, a reporter and an anchor, and I constantly heard from callers and people, oh my God, why are politicians? Why do they always lie? Can we ever get a politician who's just ever going to tell us the way it is? And then we get one. And I think we got that in a Trump, and everybody loses their mind over it. It's like, so you can't have it both ways. I want a president who talks like us, who doesn't always lie and says, and he does. I mean, the stuff that he says causes him a lot of angst and aggravation. So he's even calculating that in. But clearly he's sitting on some information that has come to light. Now, I will be frustrated if it's another promises of things that have happened, but no concrete evidence. And for the love of God, if crimes have taken place, and I totally, George, like you and I believe in the rule of law and due process and the Constitution, but for the love of God, stop talking about it till you're ready to actually arrest somebody, go for an indictment, and have a trial. And it's the talking about it where I think the credibility is eroded. Either show us the arrests or tell us nothing you can do about it. It's one or the other.
No, I think it makes sense. I'm not sure that tonight's speech is necessarily related to Mr. Clayton's hearing, just because I'm not sure it'll matter much. I mean, even if Donald Trump had absolute proof of voter fraud, I don't think the average Democrat who was asking about that is going to be motivated by what he has to say. So that my point is, I don't know that it's that. I think it may just be more like, trying to help Americans understand why it really matters that we work on voter integrity, because we don't really want to be wondering if elections are
secure, fair,
or if they're legitimate, because I don't recall in my history that I've ever if you look at American history, that we've spent time worrying about whether our elections were legitimate or not, because I think we believe they were. And maybe they weren't, and maybe we didn't know otherwise. But the bottom line is, it's becoming a big problem, and it's becoming a big issue, and we have to make sure we secure that, because, like, who'd want to, for example, have their life savings in a bank that has money stolen from them all the time, and they don't seem to do anything to prevent it from being stolen. They just let it happen.
Sure.
You'd be like, I think that's not a good idea. And I think the same thing's true with a democratic society.
Barack Obama, and not that I quote him quite often, and I have to paraphrase him, but he said something about, elections are secure because we don't have one big election. We have 50 small elections. And there's some truth to that. But when you start connecting all the polling places via the internet, that goes away. And why I've always said, why are counting machines or polling places on the internet? They only need to be the most basic computer we have. It's called a counting machine. That's all. so that the number of people who walked in and hopefully qualified to vote there, and they confirm through an ID that they are who's on that voter list, and the number of people who come in to vote has to match the number of ballots slid into that box, and that's just the counter. If 592 people voted in that precinct, there should be 592 ballots under lock and key till it's opened in the clerk's office, period. We don't need to have updates in the middle of a polling day or a voting day, rather. They don't need to be connected to the internet. I'm a big, like France did, they went back to paper ballots. Anything that opens the door for fraud and corruption needs to be addressed in front, not after or not behind. So I also think that tonight's talk could have something to do with California's elections. That seems to be a hot topic. Trump has made a couple comments about they were going to try to pull with Steve Hilton what they did to Pratt, and I called them and told them. So I don't know what that means. And now Pratt is out there, I don't know, inferring that they have a smoking gun on the elections. So let's see what he has to say tonight. But what is, before we run out of time, we have about a minute or so left. What are we working on at Frontiers of Freedom? Any issues that the Institute's behind right now? What are some interesting meetings you've taken or policies you've discussed on the Hill? You could share?
Oh, yeah. Well, last night I was at a meeting that was focusing on healthcare reforms, because healthcare has gotten just skyrocketing expensive thanks to Obamacare. And on some level, even some of the quality of the care has gone down again because of Obamacare. So it's time for America to fix that. But we do a lot of also national security stuff and things that promote secure borders and, of course, reduction in taxes and regulatory regime that doesn't kind of shut down the economy, those sorts of things.
Mm-hmm. Well, you can tell me anytime you need me to fly down there, George. I'll be happy to shoot down to DC again. I do love taking a trip. And I'd love to see, the last time I was there, the reflection pool was not what it is today, right? When I was there and Teddy was still alive and Silas, we went down there, and that it was actually, I was so heartbroken when I walked up to that pool and it looked disgusting. So the fact that
muddy pond.
Exactly, it looks great. George, thank you for taking time out, joining us here on the Joe Mangiacotti Show Thursday edition. Of course, we'll see you back at the weekly report once that gets underway. That'll wrap up today's show, folks. Thank you for joining us. Joe out.